There's a point many people reach where they begin to look at themselves more closely. They pay attention to their thoughts, their reactions, their patterns. They try to understand why they feel the way they do. And in many ways, this seems like a thoughtful and intelligent thing to do. After all, if something feels off, it makes sense to examine it more closely, to reflect, to try to understand what's happening. And at first, this kind of attention can seem useful. You notice patterns you hadn't seen before. You become more aware of your habits. You understand yourself more clearly. But over time, something subtle can begin to happen. The more closely you observe yourself, the more there seems to be to observe. Small reactions become more noticeable. Passing thoughts feel more significant. Minor shifts in mood can stand out more clearly. And because this attention is now directed inward more consistently, your experience begins to change. Not necessarily because something new is happening, but because more of it is being noticed. And when this attention is connected to the idea that something needs to be fixed, it takes on an entirely different direction. You're not just observing yourself. You're looking for something. Something that can explain the unease. Something that can be corrected. So attention becomes selective. It begins to scan for what might be wrong, what might need adjustment, what might need to be understood more deeply. And because the mind is good at finding patterns, it usually succeeds. It begins to notice things, another habit, another reaction, another way in which things could be slightly different. So the process continues. You observe yourself more closely. You analyze. You make more effort to clearly understand yourself. So you can finally feel settled. But here's where the dynamic becomes important. The more you look at yourself through the lens of correction, the more material there is to work on. Because attention has a powerful effect on experience. What you consistently look for becomes easier to see. So when your attention is organized around finding what needs fixing, you'll keep finding something. Not because there's necessarily an endless list of problems, but because the process is oriented around identifying them. And this is where overthinking can make matters worse. Not because reflection is inherently a flaw, or because awareness is a problem, but because the direction of attention matters. When attention is guided by the assumption that something about yourself needs to be resolved, then observation becomes part of the fixing process. The more you observe, the more the sense that something needing attention can grow. And so the process, instead of offering clarity, it can lead to escalation. More thought, more analysis, more effort to figure things out. And because the original feeling of unease continues to appear from time to time again, the conclusion seems to confirm itself. There must still be something to understand. There must still be something to resolve. And so the process continues. And over time, something subtle can happen. You become increasingly preoccupied with yourself, as if a significant portion of your attention is always directed inward, watching, evaluating, trying to make sense of what's happening. Not necessarily because anything dramatic is wrong, but because the process of trying to resolve the unease seems ongoing. And this raises an interesting question. If the act of constantly examining yourself is part of what sustains the sense that something needs attention, then where's this process heading? If every round of observation generates more material to analyze, then the effort to understand and resolve yourself may have no end, which suggests something worth considering. What if overthinking yourself doesn't bring you closer to resolution, but keeps the process of self-correction in motion? This is something we'll definitely further explore.